Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the channel Smartron. Today we are going to discuss the topic Principle of Inheritance and Variation. In this video, the mode of language is going to be English, but at times I might use Hindi for better understanding. So let's begin. Talking about principle of inheritance, the first thing which comes is principle. What does this principle mean? Principle means a set of rules or regulations. Then the next thing which comes is inheritance. Now this is the most important term. Inheritance means those identical features which are exactly same as your parents and the sibling and your siblings. Those are the things which you inherit from your parents. For example, suppose your dad have blue eyes. Your dad's eyes are blue. And similarly, your eyes are also blue. So you inherit the blue eyes from your dad. So this is what inheritance means. Inheritance is the exact copy of those features which are acquired by you as well as your parents, or in the other way is acquired by you as well as your offsprings. That's what is inheritance. So let me write down the exact definition. Inheritance is the transmission of genetic characters from parents to offspring. Okay, so the transmission of genetic characters from parents to offsprings. Now, what does this genetic word mean? Okay, I'll come to that later, but let's first discuss about variation. Well, variation are those features which are exactly different. I mean, not exactly different, I rectify myself. Variations are those features which are completely different from your parents and you, or maybe you and your sibling. Suppose you have a widow's peak in your head, What does the widow's peak mean? Widow's peak means, okay, this is the man, beautiful looking man, and he has a V kind of a structure in his head. So this is called widow's peak. But his son does not has a widow's peak. He has plain hair on his forehead. So here we can see that the characteristics of the dad and the son are totally different. So this is what we call variation, and this variation occurs due to the mixing of genes during the formation of zygote, and not really zygote, but it happens quite earlier. We'll talk about that later. Well, okay, not going to that point. The definition of variation is, so the exact definition of variation is deviation from parents. Deviation of characters from parents. And because of these two things, inheritance and variation, we find that no offspring is exactly similar to his parents or clone of their parents. No offspring is exactly similar to his parents or clone of their parents. This is just because of these two things, inheritance and variations. When we are born, or when before our birth, when the formation of zygote occurs, or rather when the gametes are formed, there is a crossover between the genes and the genes exchange. Just because of this reason, there is a recombination in genetic code in every individual. And that's why the characteristics of an offspring are quite different from the parents, and the characteristics of the offsprings are, some of the characteristics of the offsprings are also similar as the parents. Okay, so moving on. Moving on, in this chapter, as we are reading the chapter Principle of Inheritance and Variation, we cannot resist ourselves to talk about Gregor John Mendel, who is also known as the father of genetics. Okay, so there is a short story about his works and his life. So basically, he was born in 1822 and he died in 1884. Very short lifespan though. His father was a farmer and he lived in Austria. These are the basic stories about him, and later on in his life he worked as a priest in a church, and his main work was on Pisum sativum. Scientific name, so we should underline, and not only that, I made a mistake over here. The S should be small. Okay, so one thing, in most of our lessons we are going to follow basically the NCERT, because for the students who are eager to become doctors and engineers in India have to follow NCERT because they have to give the examination NEET or JEE for getting into their preferred colleges. So yeah, that's the reason why we are going to follow NCERT. This is a holy book which we consider in our country. But not to worry, because I'll definitely discuss more topics which will be a little bit of high level, which will be helpful for you guys to understand this topic.